Hello and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I'm Sonia and I'm very glad you're here. When I was a little girl, I became very aware of the iconic British food pairing of tea and crumpets. In movies and literature, from Daphne du Maurier's opening description of Mandalay and Rebecca to J.K. Rowling writing about them in Harry Potter, I knew hot crumpets dripping with butter and served with a cup of tea was a thing. And it's believed that it's been a thing, at least the hot buttered crumpet part of it, since the 14th century. So imagine my surprise when experiencing my first tea in England years ago, there were no crumpets. I admit I was just a tad disappointed. But just because crumpets are not usually on the menu for a formal afternoon tea, doesn't mean they can't be there. In fact, just as your own solo treat with a cup of tea in the afternoon is just fine. But what is a crumpet? Well, a crumpet looks a little like a thick, small American pancake, or a bit like an English muffin, or maybe a combination of the two. But that's where the similarity ends. An English muffin is a little drier, and it needs to be sliced in half and toasted to be enjoyed. But a thick crumpet is toasted all in one piece. And interestingly enough, although toasted, the inside stays very spongy and even chewy. And of course, the side with all the holes and crannies holds all that lovely sweet melted butter, or anything else you choose to smear on it. So where do you get crumpets? Well, I saw them once at my local grocery store, but it has been years ago. Perhaps they didn't catch on because I've not seen them since. Of course, they're available online, but there are numerous recipes from which to make your own, and it's not terribly involved. These are all the ingredients you'll need, along with a hand mixer and crumpet rings to keep the batter contained. So I have 150 grams or 1 cup of all-purpose flour, 200 milliliters or 3/4 of a cup plus 1 tablespoon of warm water, tap water will do, a half a teaspoon of kosher salt. If you don't have kosher, a 1/4 teaspoon of table salt will do. Then a half teaspoon of white sugar and 1 teaspoon of baking powder. Then 1 teaspoon of yeast, that's instant or active dry yeast, either will do, plus 1 tablespoon of warm water. Again, tap water is fine. Be sure your yeast is current. If you're like me, it can stay on the shelf a lot longer than you realize. And finally, for your pan and crumpet rings, 2 tablespoons of unsalted butter. First, in a small bowl, dissolve the 1 teaspoon of yeast in the 1 tablespoon of warm water. Then, in a medium-sized bowl, place the flour, water, and salt, and whisk together. I like to bring it together by hand at first, but then switch to an electric hand mixer for 1 minute. If all you have is a regular whisk, you'll need about 5 minutes of hard stirring to get the consistency you need. Once done, add the yeast mixture, sugar, and baking powder to the bowl, and whisk for another 15 to 30 seconds. Once done, cover the bowl with a tea towel and keep in a warm place for 15 to 30 minutes until the surface gets nice and foamy. It's not going to increase in the volume very much. But this is perfect. Now, brush a non-stick skillet, I like cast iron, with melted butter. Now do the same with the inside of the crumpet rings. These are non-stick, but I still want to do this. I'll put a link for them in the description box. And I'm only going to put 3 crumpet rings in this pan because I don't want to crowd the crumpets as they're cooking. I want to start with my heat on medium-high. You want the pan hot enough that the batter sizzles, but not so hot that it burns. I will be turning down the heat later. Place your crumpet rings into the pan. And if you're not quite sure whether your pan is ready for batter, you can drop just a little bit on there and see what happens. See if it starts sizzling for you. Then once you know you're ready, you can pour about 1/4 cup of batter into each ring. You can go a little more than that, but you don't want to get too close to the top. These are going to rise. You want to cook these for 1 to 2 minutes on the medium-high heat and watch as bubbles start appearing on the surface. After cooking a couple of minutes, turn the heat down to medium and cook for another minute. Some bubbles will start to pop around the edge. Finally, turn the heat to medium-low and cook further for 2.5 to 4 minutes until the surface is set and no more bubbles are popping. You're looking for the surface to get drier and setting up a bit, a lot like cooking a pancake. Then carefully remove the rings. If your rings aren't non-stick, you might run a knife around to loosen them a bit. Well, no worries. Even if that happens, it's okay. Crumpets are very forgiving. Then, once the rings are removed, you can flip the crumpets and cook on the other side for about a minute, maybe even 2. You're just looking for a slight golden color. Just like that. Perfect. Now you can rebutter the pan and the crumpet rings to use up the rest of the batter. Do be careful and watch your heat. You might want to turn it down for the next batch so you don't scorch the bottoms. Repeat the process until all the batter is used, and then transfer the crumpets to a wire rack to cool completely. And here they are. Now this recipe makes 6, but I was able to get 7 out of it. You can eat them now, but they're a great make-ahead treat. Now crumpets can easily go on the afternoon tea menu in one of 2 places. If just served with butter, a plate of warm toasted crumpets could easily come out with the savories, the sandwiches and savory tarts. But if you want to add honey or jam to crumpets, which a lot of people do, they could come out along with the scones, or, shudder the thought, in place of them. One note on that is while scones really are best baked and eaten the same day, crumpets are excellent toasted and eaten the next day. So there is that benefit for time's sake. It's really up to you as to how much food and/or variety you wish to have on your tea table. I personally think they're just great dripping with butter and served with a simple cup of tea. Have you had tea and crumpets? Were you delighted or did you find it just meh? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more afternoon tea videos. Until next time, bye-bye.